4:46 p.m. Open air log continuation Pacific Standard Time. It's still August 9th, 2023. One freaked and pissed off John Weaver of Roseman, California, and I can't even put into words what the hell I saw on a news report concerning about Governor Sanctimonious now going to be banning Shakespeare? The classical literature that each English class would base part of their lessons on, one thing or another. CNN just made the tag, and I am going to raise the volume up slightly here, and I just want to be ready for it because I want to get this, and I may get some commercials on here. So, every literature class I'd been into regarding, well, English literature actually, would talk about Shakespeare. Even if we were talking about it in a time zone of Shakespeare or not, everything related was around Shakespeare because when you were talking about literature, you were talking about Shakespeare all the time, especially when you're dealing with English literature. And I'm talking about from the country of England. Not American literature, because there are several other authors out there. Whitmore, Frost. No, not Frost. Twain. Twain would seem to be the epitome of satirical. Asimov to me. Well, Bradbury. The authors that I read and dreamed, Terry Brooks was one of them. I think he's American. But you just don't ban literature. But this guy, oh, they're going to be talking about Russia. Okay, never mind. We're talking about Ukraine getting its ass kicked and kicking Russia's ass. So it's all getting crazy out there. But even when I was going through school, we heard about Shakespeare. K through 12. Some of the works that they had, that they would show us. We would get into it. The movie Renaissance Man, with Danny DeVito in it. Danny DeVito. This guy, an insurance salesperson who read and understood Shakespeare and had a heart of it. The character he portrayed, goes to the U.S. Army for a job to teach recruits, make sure that they're going to pass, and the only way he gets to them is through literature. I mean, they read comics or read other things, but they get interested when he's reading Shakespeare, and then he's teaching Shakespeare to them in order for them to get through Army training because of their education level had to be raised up, and if they flunked, they're out of the Army. And they wanted to learn everything. And 4 or 5 recruits in there would learn Shakespeare, quote lines, and understand it, and made him proud and cry. And at the end, he's seeing his students in the line of soldiers. And it got to him where 4 guys and 1 lady were saluting him. I mean, one female recruit winked at him. The other 4 guys saluted their teacher. It's called The Renaissance Man. I had watched it in the 80s and 90s, especially when I could get to it, and just watch it. And just enjoy the daylights out of it. I didn't realize the impact it would make. It was one of those hidden things out there, those hidden movies that exactly didn't draw as much, but it's still a cult favorite, I think, out there. And with all the lockdown on literature, this really pisses me off. I'm still waiting for the Hurricane news to get passed so I can hear what they're saying about the Sanctimonious taking out Shakespeare. They don't have that much time right now in the news. But he's going to put a ban on this? The bane of literature? We'd focus more on Ukraine at this point over here instead of this damn thing. And Ukraine is important. But this pisses me off. I'm like, how do I deal with this one? It's like all my authors lined up and somebody says, we can't deal with you. And I got to stay on it. The state law that Sanctimonious signed in limits the classical stuff and the classical elements of the story, even when it sounds racy to our time. Even the Bible sounds like it, but are they going to be eliminating the Bible as well? They talk about racy stuff in there too. The Old Testament was full of it. Are they going to be banning that as well? Just keep the New Testament, but not the Old Testament? Are they going to be banning the Bible? Maybe they'll ban the Quran at the same time. Now, political correct is one thing, but damn it, come on. What the hell's with this little shithead? What the hell's with the people of Florida that bought this shit from this shithead? They bought him hook, line, and suckered. Yeah, I blame the people on this one here. And the bitch of it is, they have legislatures in there that didn't even bother to get themselves a recall option in there. They want their power. They love their money. They love to be in there. And guess what? They're going to get their asses reamed in the next election. I hope to God they do. So maybe the next governor and the next elected legislature in state of Florida can actually get reversals going on left and right. You're going after colleges. Colleges. I've been doing that for about a year or more. Trying to make it less liberal and more conservative in thinking and feeling and being just like them. Community colleges all the way up to the universities. And their literature has to be governed as well. It has to think without woke. It has to think without liberalism. Now we have to program you into our way of thinking. It's going to be another long year and a few months before we get elections going on. And we're going to survive these stunts. Generations are going to be reeling over this damn thing. People coming out are not going to be recognized by other universities because of what Sanctimonious is doing to his state and what he wants to do for the rest of the country. No wonder his numbers are going down into the toilet. I hope so. Which makes old Trump bag, the gas bag at number 45, he's not more appealing.
One Florida school district says it will no longer have students read the full text Juliet, Hamlet, and Macbeth. This is in response to changes in state law under Governor Ron DeSantis, which limit the talk of sex in schools. Now, in the Hillsborough School District, which includes most of Tampa, students will now only read excerpts of Shakespeare's works to avoid any racy scenes. Out front now, Joseph Poole, a high school teacher in Hillsborough County. Joseph, I remember reading those plays in high school. I don't remember anything sexually explicit, but I do remember reading them and reading them in full. And you've been teaching Shakespeare in your class for more than 20 years, right? It's been a cornerstone of what you teach your students as well. So let me just read a famous scene from the end of Romeo and Juliet. These are the last words from Juliet before she dies. "O happy dagger, this is thy sheath, there rust, and let me die." So this is now explicit, so now they can't read the end of Romeo and Juliet, it's banned?
Well, I want to be clear. The directive from our interim superintendent has made it clear that teachers can, but it simply was removed from our curriculum in the high school level. But that particular quote that you talked about, Shakespeare was by no means averse to sexual puns, euphemisms, or allusions. But in that scene, she does have a dagger in her hand, and of course, the innuendo there is the sheath is referring to something different, innuendo, and of course the dagger as well. I think that discussing that might bring up some situations in the classroom.
So you support it being banned in light of the legislation, or you don't?
Oh, absolutely not. No, I think that it's very difficult to teach just excerpts of Shakespeare. When you take a look at the whole the play, for example, there are things that you can get out of that you just can't get from reading an excerpt, like the theme in particular, character development. There are so many other things that's so rich for discussion, for academic discussions, scholarly discussions, that if you narrow it down or pare it down to something so small as an excerpt, you're missing just so much. And we're certainly not preparing our students to, be college students and be able to be versed in that.
No, and I mean, I remember reading them and all the I never remember any conversations, honestly, about this. Although I can imagine in some high schools that might make it more appealing to have all the other conversations if they can kind of get a laugh about something. But let me ask you about this. Your school district appears to be alone in this decision for now, but obviously you're dealing with a set of laws in Florida that are changing the way a lot of things are taught and a lot of books that are available. But your school district says they're doing this to protect you from possible disciplinary action. And I know you don't support it, but what do you say to that when they're starting to put more and more parameters, whether to protect or because they support it? What's the actual impact?
Well, I certainly believe that the district leaders and also the people that are in charge of the curriculum are definitely trying to protect teachers. Much of the legislation that's been coming out recently is so vague, and school districts have no choice but to follow the law. But whenever there is so much ambiguity, and we've even reached out and requested clarification that we're still waiting on, teachers are nervous and they're taking the brunt of this. And it's really distracting from what we are here to do, which is to teach students. And we're worrying about all this other, ancillary stuff that is really detracting from us being our very best.
Yeah, and as you said, you believe detracting from your ability to prepare students for college.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, Joseph, I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much, and I hope your students do get the benefit of reading Shakespeare, because, sometimes, I think we all know, right, if you don't read it then, you may never read it in your life, and it is a wonderful thing to have that exposure.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
Okay. Teacher's reaction in Florida. A reaction of, for me, it's disbelief. As I said before, I've read other authors besides Shakespeare, not the complete works of it. Yes, I had covered a little bit of it here and there in school and in college. What drives me crazy at this point is having that affect me these days, one way or another. I don't go out quoting Shakespeare to say how my life is, but it's nice to have some kind of literature background. So It's like if it goes any further, and if we actually out here in California, let's say for example, if we actually had the state legislature in California deciding that literature that Florida is going through is going to be happening over here, it ain't going to happen. But let's just say if it did, for argument's sake, English teachers would have a hell of a time with American and world literature. They would have a hard enough time trying to equate Kafka to Orwell to maybe Mickey Spillane. You're going to say, how does that work? Kafka and his weird ass way of looking at life to George Orwell in his 1984 works, how dour it is. And then we're looking at Mickey Spillane, which is a criminal writer. And sometimes I'm reading the realm of Mickey Spillane in class, and just a couple of books of it, and I'm thinking to myself, what the hell? American noir of how the 1930s and 40s and 50s are with your tough gangsters and your detectives dealing with a police department that's corrupt half the time, and you don't know who the main characters are, how screwed up it is. And you're guilty before you're proven innocent. So it's just like dealing with 1984. You're guilty of having lousy thoughts before you're charged with anything. And then we get you brainwashed. Of course, they wouldn't do that in the Spillane novels. Kafka probably would. Or if we're going to be talking about Asimov in his exploration of the universe, next to Bradbury in his, and then Roddenberry trying to build up on top of that one. And then you would throw in a bit of Terry Brooks. This time you would deal with the medieval fantasy stuff. Medieval fantasy? After you get an intergalactic empire? Or how about the empire of the Earth falling off? Or actually on a planet being encountered where you have the medievalism with magic and powers and demons and everything else. How would the one deal with that one? How would one be able to deal with that kind of energy? And yet science fiction, we could explore into that kind of realm. An intergalactic empire runs in, or a federation of sorts, runs into a planet that's ruled of energy that they can't define. There've probably been people writing about this damn shit for a long while. Or you go through time and then you run into an Earth that's no longer able to do whatever it can. It's rediscovering itself. And that situation would have been equated to Terry Brooks. But imagination and fantasy like that probably wouldn't, because what happens in the imagination world that we have nudity, sexual behavior, or cross beings. They wouldn't even like mythology. Mythology of using some of that stuff. The Greeks. Romans weren't pretty good on that one. No. I mean, they tried, but not much. It was the Greeks who actually did a lot more of the creativity. The Romans just stole the damn thing. You didn't hear anything about it in the Egyptian times either. There was nothing written about, nothing in tombs or anything else like that. But you read Greek tragedies. You'd read Homer and Odyssey. You'd see how heroism and confusion and hero worship and God worship were versus being a mortal man dealing with the incredible odds. We could look at the heroism and the aesthetics of the damn thing, but unfortunately, some of the statues that they got out there, how we promoted the muscular build of a person to be astutely beautiful than what we see today on in our porn things. I know the statue of Michelangelo of like he's Olympian God, and you see everything on him. A lot of people consider that pornographic and like it's the human body, no. And yet, art students, photography classes would talk about this, would even demonstrate this, display it. Now, how would the world of Sanctimonious be able to deal with this one? Would photography be banned? Would art classes be banned? They do nudes. I got to admit that there was a history of photography I was taking. I like hearing about this damn woman's life. The rest of the class we had to learn on our own. We passed the damn thing, but we protested a hell of a lot in this damn class. When she was the head of the photography department, all she could talk about was her own damn life. We wanted to talk about materials to each other. How these things would represent something. Good Lord. It just drove us nuts on this one. But she was saying in the beginning of class, and we had to be prepared for that, that there would be we would have to study the human body a bit for the history, but we didn't. We just learned more and more about this woman's situation. That's it. Oh boy. But if Sanctimonious was running things, even those things would be having issues. They would. My head is tilted towards the constant crime rate happening within the Southern California region. Crazy. In reality, right now, we are dealing with things we don't want to deal with. I personally don't like dealing with this. I don't like hearing schools limiting because of certain state laws out there tell us that we have to be ambiguous about it. We have to have ambiguity. If we study the Bible, we're going to be we got to have confusion. We have to have ambiguity in this thing. We got to be conflicted like crazy because of what it does represent and doesn't represent. So how the hell am I supposed to be able to deal with that shit? God knows, I don't know. How am I supposed to not deal with that? And we're dealing with it. I'm dealing with it. I don't know why, but I'm dealing with it. So how do we do this to ourselves? How do we take care of our own selves at this point? It scares the living crap out of me that we're going through this shit. And are we prepared to have our knowledge limited because we've had people with intention of how a drive is crazy? Apparently we are. So I blame everybody.